All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going on a bit of a scientific mission. We're going to get inside the mind, well, more like the genes, of one of agriculture's most wanted criminals. This is all about how scientists decided to crack the code of a tiny but mighty global superpest. So who's our villain? It's the Colorado potato beetle. And yeah, it might look pretty small, kinda harmless even, but don't let that fool you. This little guy is the #1 defoliator of potato crops across the entire northern hemisphere. We're talking massive financial losses for farmers year after year. So, what's the big mystery here? It's how this thing became so dominant. I mean, this beetle isn't just a picky eater. It's an unbelievably successful invader and a true master of survival. It's managed to spread across entire continents and, get this, it's developed this almost superhuman ability to fight back against pretty much everything we throw at it. The real question is, how?
Well, to answer that, researchers knew they had to go deeper, way deeper, right down to the molecular level. They figured, hey, it's time to read this thing's biological instruction manual, its genetic playbook, to really understand its strategies from the inside out.
Okay, so Section 1. Let's really get a handle on the scale of this problem. Because, this isn't just some annoying bug you find in your garden. We're talking about a highly efficient agricultural terror, a really formidable opponent in the fight for our food.
52. What's that number? Well, that's the number of different chemical compounds this beetle has developed resistance to. At least 52. Ever since we started hitting it with large-scale insecticides back in the 1950s, it's just adapted. And that's not just one or two types of pesticides, we're talking every major class. It is an absolutely incredible display of evolution happening in hyperspeed.
And its global invasion has just been relentless. Originally, it was native to Mexico and the southeastern US, just minding its own business, feeding on wild plants. But then, sometime before 1850, it made a crucial switch to potatoes. And from that point on, its march was totally unstoppable. In just 30 years, it had crossed the entire United States. By the 1920s, it somehow hitched a ride to Europe, and within just 50 years, it had blanketed most of the continent. And it's not done. Today, it's still pushing eastward across Asia.
So that begs the question, right? How in the world do you fight an enemy that adapts that quickly? Well, you have to understand its secrets. And that brings us right to the heart of our story, a high-tech genetic investigation.
The technique they used is called transcriptome sequencing. Sounds complicated, I know, but let's break it down. Step 1, they went out and collected a bunch of these beetles from all over Europe. Step 2, back in the lab, they extracted what are basically the active genetic messages, the RNA. Think of RNA as the little notes that tell the beetle's body what to do. Then step 3, they used some really advanced tech to read millions and millions of these tiny messages. And finally, for step 4, they used a supercomputer to stitch all those millions of messages together. The result? The very first complete genetic library for this species, the transcriptome. And just to give you a sense of the scale here, it was immense. They combined their own work with a data set that was already out there, and they ended up with over 1.7 million raw genetic reads. You can literally think of it as having 1.7 million tiny little scraps of paper, and each one has a tiny piece of the beetle's biological code written on it. So then the supercomputer gets to work, painstakingly piecing together all those millions of scraps into just under 122,000 unique genetic blueprints. These are called transcripts, and this was the playbook they'd been looking for. Finally, the real investigation could begin. What secrets was this thing hiding?
And as they sifted through this mountain of genetic data, scientists started to zero in on the code behind the beetle's two main superpowers. The two big things that make it such a ridiculously unstoppable pest.
And here it is, the beetle's classic 1-2 punch. First up, you've got something called diapause. It's basically a state of super hibernation that lets it survive the most brutal winters, droughts, you name it. And then, the second punch, its infamous insecticide resistance. That's just mind-blowing ability to evolve defenses against the very poisons we designed to kill it.
All right, let's talk about that first superpower, diapause. With this brand new genetic map in hand, scientists could finally start to decode the secrets behind this incredible survival skill.
So how did they actually find these hibernation genes? Well, it was some clever detective work. They took a list of 108 genes that are known to be involved in diapause in other insects, like the common fruit fly. Then, they compared that list to the beetle's brand new genetic library. And what did they find? A match for 101 of them. That's a 94% hit rate. It was this huge aha moment, confirming they were definitely on the right track to figuring out how this beetle hunkers down to survive.
Okay, on to superpower number 2.
And this is arguably the one that's most frustrating for farmers. It's chemical defenses. This is where the genetic data really pulled back the curtain on the beetle's massive and incredibly effective chemical arsenal.
And what they found is just, wow. The scientists uncovered hundreds of genes from families that are well known for fighting off poisons. For example, they found 221 unique genetic sequences for something called cytochrome P450s. Those are key for breaking down toxins. They found another 194 for esterases, which also break down poisons, and 45 for GSTs, another critical detox family. The big takeaway here is that this isn't just one single defense mechanism. It's a massive, multi-layered, totally redundant arsenal for neutralizing pretty much anything we can throw at it.
So you can see why this research is such a game changer. The ultimate goal here isn't just to admire the enemy's strategy. It's about building a new arsenal for ourselves, a smarter, more targeted way to fight back.
And a really crucial part of the study wasn't just finding the genes, it was organizing them. I know this chart looks a little intense, but think about it like this. They used a system to sort thousands of these genes by their specific job, what they do, where they do it in the cell, and what larger process they're a part of. It's exactly like taking a messy, jumbled toolbox and neatly organizing every single wrench, screwdriver, and socket. What you end up with is a super detailed map of how the beetle's entire biological machine actually works.
So, okay, what does this new genetic map actually give us? I mean, what can we do with it?
Well, for starters, we can design way smarter pesticides, ones that target unique weaknesses in the beetle's biology, which would make them way more effective and, hopefully, less harmful to the environment. We can also develop tools to actually monitor beetle populations and look for the very first signs of new resistance, maybe even stopping an outbreak before it starts. It even opens the door to engineering potato plants that can better defend themselves. Basically, this research gives us the foundation for a much more strategic, much smarter approach to pest control.
And, the researchers who did this work said it best. They explained that this report is way more than just a pile of data. It's a foundation. It gives us the tools we need to really, truly understand this crazy, successful species from the inside out, and it paves the way for decades of future science.
And all of this brings us back to the big question, doesn't it? For more than a century, the Colorado potato beetle has been one step ahead of us. It has adapted, it has resisted, it has conquered. But now, for the very first time, we have its instruction manual. We've read the enemy's playbook. So the question is, can we finally get one step ahead?